Hey everybody, this is Modern Refugee. Was having a little problems here with my audio. Just let me know, guys, if you can hear me. I would appreciate it. Hey dog, hey 1776. How you guys doing this evening? Awesome. Thank you, Monkey Food Garden. I appreciate it. How's everything down there in Texas, Monkey? You guys holding on to dear life there with all the cold? Hey there, Spooky. Hey, Captain Bart. Good to see all you guys. Getting all my texts here let me know that I guess I am good. It's been a hectic couple of days here. Anywho, hey there, Meyer. Whatever prepper. Mr. Bumblehill, Happy Girl, Candace, Gallo. Appreciate all you guys being here. First thing here, I want to show you guys. I want to show you guys a little money saving tip here. First of all, what is happening? Yeah, I think Minneapolis is all on everybody's mind in the prepping community as well as everybody else. Hey, Dana Green, we're doing okay. Well, that was. We'll talk about a little bit of that stuff in a minute here, but I want to show you guys a little money saving tip. This right here, this is a chainsaw air filter. Their air filters are kind of an important part of small engines or whatever. They can be expensive, and sometimes if your engine can't breathe, it won't start. It'll give you problems. So sometimes you have to clean these guys out to get them to work. And if you have an air compressor, you can get what's called a blowgun. It looks like this right here, and you can hook this up to your air compressor, and you can use the compressed air to clean these air filters out. But if you don't have an air compressor, whatever, you don't have a shop, you don't have a lot of tools, you live in an apartment, whatever. Another thing that works is the stuff that you use to clean the your keyboards out on your electronic gear. You can use that to clean the dirt out of air filters. And, there's other applications for that. There's sometimes where you need to blow the dust or dirt out of something to go ahead and work on it or whatever. So like when you open something up, you're not getting dust and dirt to fall down in. If you don't have an air compressor, a can of this is good to have around. And if you already got a computer and stuff, there's a good chance you already have a can of this laying around. So that's my little money saving tip that I wanted to share with you guys here, that if you don't have a big old air compressor, a can of this works really, really well. So that was the first thing that I wanted to mention here. And see who's all in here. Hey, Jody. Monkey Food Garden, we missed the ice and had 3.25 inches of rain. Wow, that's a lot. If that would be snow, that's a heck of a lot of snow. That's over 30 inches of snow. This morning when we woke up, going down to 22 tonight, it's about zero here. Yeah, I'm praying for everybody in the storm too. I hope that everybody's kind of got everything battened down. They had enough warning here ahead of time. Hey there, Tom. How you doing? Hey there, Teresa. How you doing down um let's see here. Hey, Lisa from Hudson Valley. How you doing? Hey, Tammy Brennan. Yeah, glad we don't have any ice. We've had a really fine snow. Uh, yeah, that canned air is pretty helpful. And like I said, sometimes that'll let you prolong the life of an air filter if you could clean that out. And a lot of times, if I'm working on something and I think the air cleaner can go a little bit longer, I will, blow it off my air compressor, canned air, and I will use that. That way, I don't have to go out and buy another filter right away. Hey, Patrice, how you doing? And I think the big thing that's on, everybody's mind is what's going on in Minneapolis, on top of course, the weather and everything. And I think we're really getting set up for some really bad things this summer. If it wouldn't be so cold right now with everything that's going on, I think that the civil unrest would be a lot worse. I think the cold is dampering that down to a certain extent, but as winter goes on and it turns into spring and the warmer temperatures move north here, I can see where there's definitely going to be some issues. And another thing that I wanted to mention, it is so important now with the way things are, with all the potential problems that are out there with the civil unrest. And it's even going past civil unrest. We were getting into really sort of a more violent time, I guess is the best way to put it. And I remember my grandmother talking about this specifically, not my mother so much, but my grandmother. She said that the 1960s were pretty bad with all the civil unrest that took place in the 1960s. And she said, as good as the 50s were, she was really glad when the 60s were done and over with, because there was just so much in the latter half of the 1960s. There was just so many problems with civil unrest. If people had to go to the city or something, or if they had business that they had to take care of, that was always something that was in the back of their mind. And I'm thinking that we're going to have to start reacting to that kind of stuff too. We're really going to have to ratchet up our own personal surveillance and our people always talk about the situational awareness of where you're in to try to avoid issues. And you really need to have a plan to avoid the potential problems and keeping an eye on what's going on around you. And you just don't want to get boxed in. You don't want to get boxed into a situation. You don't want to, cliche, but you don't want to turn down a dead end street when somebody's chasing you, basically. You always want to have, when you go into a venue, you go into a shopping mall, you go into a store, doctor's office, hospital, whatever it is, you really want to pay attention to like emergency exits and that kind of stuff. And that's something that people just don't really think about unless there's something going on. Like when I stay at a hotel, whatever floor I'm on in the hotel, the very first thing that I do after I, drop my stuff off in the room is I'm going to go check where the emergency exits are so I can get out of there if something happens, especially when I'm in an unknown environment, so to speak. And that's something that's really been in my mind here since this latest incident took place. Things can change on a dime. You're not going to necessarily know what's going on at the time. If you see something that's off baseline, that's not really setting well in your gut, you need to, take the initiative to, evacuate yourself, basically. Hey there, Sea Farmer. How you doing? Hi, Koi Lin. Uh, Monkey Food Garden, Emmett. Soon, I believe, if things are ramping up in Minnesota. Yeah, I read something somewhere that they ran a Civil War. They only ran like a Civil War potential war game or whatever. They ran that through like some kind of AI algorithm, and it actually came up that one of the places where it would start would be Minnesota, which that just blew my mind. I would have never thought that Minnesota would be like the starting point of something like this. I can think of a dozen other places where I would think that it would be more feasible, and Minnesota is more or less off the radar, I think, for a lot of people, myself included. But now with everything that's been going on, plus the past things that went on in Minnesota, it's really in the forefront of potential issues. Yeah, it's going to be a hot summer. I agree, Papa Frog, and not in a good way whatsoever. And then too, the economy, it really doesn't look that good right now from where I'm standing, and from the stuff I've seen. I've said that in other live streams and stuff. And, I'm not going to know how that kind of pans out until it gets a little bit warmer, but everything is just slowed right down or shut right off where we are here right now. Coney, cold as a proverbial well digger's, in Central Texas. I believe that. Hey there, AR American. How you doing? Fallen Skies, how you doing? Back Archer's Homestead. South Middle Tennessee here. We've had sleet since 6 Friday night, stopped for an hour, and then rain till noon today, and we got a half-inch ice, hopefully. And the power's been out since 5 this morning. Ugh, that's not good at all. Hey there, Mother Refugee. How you doing? stopping in to check on me. Another thing too that I wanted to mention with this cold snap, there's a lot of times, especially folks in the South, if as long as it's safe to do so, of course, but you know, a lot of us don't have the opportunity to use our defensive implements in extremes of weather temperature and weather. So when we have these real cold snaps where it's, down around zero or whatever, I always try to take those and I like to take some of my equipment out and try it out because I'll tell you what, if anything will show you any deficiencies in your equipment, whether it's optics, whether it's going to run, if it's frosted up or whatever, it's going to be cold weather. Cold weather will show you the problem quicker than anything else, whether your batteries are weak in your gear or whatever. And so it's a good time if you get a chance where you can go out and it's not too bad on the roads or whatever, you can get to a place that's safe. Try all that equipment out in this cold weather. Set it outside for a couple hours before you're going to be ready to use it, so the stuff gets good and cold, and that way you can find out if you can use it. Like I said in one of my posts here a couple days ago, it was 13 below. I took a picture on my truck and it said, this is not a good day to use your AK underfolder because that's all metal. And when you put that up against your face, that'll freeze right to your face. And I said, you got to have at least a 4-inch beard or a mask or something if you'd be using something like that. And you're not going to know that generally unless, you've actually taken that stuff out and used it in those temperatures. Storm today. Good day for comfort food. Grilled cheese and tomato soup. Sounds good. I actually threw a couple of chickens. Chicken was on sale when we got to the city this week, and I actually put a couple of chickens in the smoker, smoked them for an hour or so, and then finished them off in the oven and just had it with baked potato, coleslaw, and baked beans. It turned out actually really good. And I say baked beans, it wasn't baked beans. It was how mom and grandma would take the canned pork and beans, and they'd put a little ketchup in it, a little mustard in it, some brown sugar, a little bit of bacon, and they just would heat that up through kind of doctoring up the canned goods to make them taste better. And boy, that went really good with that kind of lightly smoked chicken. It was awesome. Hey, John Poole, how you doing? Scottish Prepper, how's things over there in Great Britain today? You guys getting slammed with bad weather over there too? Hey, Library Lizard. It took me a long time to get into the chat. Not sure why it just wouldn't let me in. It's probably because I'm talking about stuff that the powers that be don't like me talking about. It's you're gonna get it straight. You're gonna get it straight for me, whether the powers that be like it or not. Dean, weather's gotten bad enough for the sheep to have started lambing as usual. That's good to know. I guess I didn't really know that. I haven't had a lot of experience with sheep. There's been people around here that have had goats and stuff, but sheep I haven't had a lot of experience with. Coney B, cold weather showed me my problem. I can't handle the sidearms without leather gloves anymore. Yeah, and that's another thing. Practice. If you practice, I remember when I took my first CPL concealed pistol license class. It was in like January. It was like this time of year, way back in 2000, and because that's actually when they opened it up where we became a shall issue state. Um, I actually shot that course with gloves on. I think I was the only person in that entire class that actually used gloves when I had to do my practice that they wanted to watch. And I remember the instructor saying something about that you need to practice, and especially in this type of weather you need to practice with gloves on and stuff. So that's something I always take into account. Like if I'm going to go purchase something new, I want to see how large that trigger guard is so I can get my hands in there. And like ARs are easy to modify. You can actually get like an enlarged trigger guard. You can change that out from just the straight factory stock one, and those have their benefits too. And I think I've got them on all my ARs but one. One I still have the old style on that, but those are good things to keep in mind. And it's a very inexpensive upgrade. Those extended trigger guards are like from Magpul, I want to say, are like less than $10 or right around the $10 mark. Lake Lizard, how you doing? Hey, Great Garden, how you doing? Jack Vine, going to be 105 degrees here in Australia. Oh, lucky you. It's probably going to be a dry heat though, right? How are things in Australia? How are folks doing down there? How's the economy and stuff? I love talking to people like this, and the further away they are from where I'm at, I love this, and this is a good example of your human intelligence. You want to have good human intelligence in these times. From one of the people that I work with, they're going to college, which means they're kind of plugged into the youth in our general area here, and he was telling me about different groups that are forming, protest style groups. I'm not going to say any more than that, and how they're using um, social media to organize. And this is something, when you're a little bit older like me and you're not as quite tech savvy as the younger generation or whatever, that's good information to know where you can find out what's going on. Don't be afraid to, like, for me, I'm on Facebook, and I also am on different like local news groups and stuff. I like the private ones a little bit better than the public ones, but I get a lot of information off local Facebook groups, like county groups. If you live in a city groups. These and there's a couple of guys that must be all that they do is drive around and post stuff on Facebook, whether it's car accidents or it's any type of crime or there's any type of like terrible weather like what's going on now. These are great places to get sort of real time information where you can use that to your benefit to potentially protect yourself or avoid any issues. So that's something else that I wanted to mention today as well. Uh, Slammed here almost Facebook on the same finger while snowplowing. Oh, snowplowing, I'll tell you what, the guys that snowplow for extra cash are making a little bit more money this year. Prepper for the ages, how you doing? Just got in from shoveling the walk for the third time. We shoveled, and when I came home from work, I threw a little salt out, so we're kind of good to go right now. Hey there, Jen. How are things in Ohio? Miss Mary. So the guy in Minneapolis was killed because he was carrying. Wow. Well, I had a chance to talk to the chief of police today around here. He came in to where I work, and we had the basic conversation. When law enforcement encounters a firearm, they switch into their training, and whatever their training is, they go from there. And it's one of those things that it's almost like muscle memory takes over, and that is, I heard a couple of things that I both agreed and disagreed with on what took place there here today. And the one was that I kind of agree with, I'm not going to go to some kind of protest like that where there's uniformed armed people all over the place. I'm not going to carry some type of firearm into that environment because I would be at a distinct disadvantage if something happened, plain and simple. So I'm going to avoid those situations. And I'm certainly not going to, take a firearm into some situation where things are going to be inflamed. And then the other thing that I heard was people saying, "Oh, well, why did you have an extra magazine? Why did you have two magazine? Why did you have two magazines?" And to me, that was I completely disagreed with that. Law enforcement, if you're carrying, law enforcement carries extra ammunition. You should too, because you know what? There's no set number of rounds that are fired in a gunfight. And I think you can ask any seasoned law enforcement officer, if you happen to know a city policeman or a county sheriff deputy or something, ask them that plan, flat out, you know, nobody's ever said, in this last gunfight here, I wish I would have had less ammo. Nobody's ever going to say that. If you're carrying and you're competent enough in your own ability and you've went through all the training and everything that is available out there, you want to have the devices at your disposal. I'm trying to say this as generic as possible, but that's kind of how I look at that. But I can see where there is problems coming big time. There are dark days ahead for all of us, and we need to really pay attention. And it's almost going beyond prepping now. It's prepping is having all your redundancies in place and your having some extra supplies on hand, having ways to take care of yourself medically if something goes wrong, having ways to generate electricity, staying warm in cold weather, these kind of things. But then we really have to ratchet it up, and we have to take our own personal security in mind. We need to do what we can to avoid situations. We need to not get backed into a corner, like I was saying earlier here. We need to have our egress plans in place. We need to have our vehicles gassed up and ready to go in case we have to get out of Dodge. And I'm not saying this like a coward. Hey, you have to run away from everything. But we really need to take into account the deteriorating situation, the deteriorating social climate of our country right now. And these are things that I believe, as the weather warms up, things are going to continue to escalate, and they're going to continue to deteriorate. And I guess that's the easiest way that I can put it. 735, hey refugee, longtime watcher. Missed much of the live stream, but we feel with the price of precious metals showing up and all the unrest, things are not going well. Can you share your thoughts? Well, I have some silver and stuff, and I have sold silver. When I needed stuff and silver was running high, I sold stuff. I don't have a problem with anybody, buying silver or whatever. If they think that's best for them, hey man, go for it. I'm no financial guy. If I was a financial guy, I'd have a hell of a lot more money than what I got now. But if they, people think that that's good for them, hey, go for it. And you know, as high as precious metals are right now, I've got a little bit of extra silver here. I've been thinking about selling it, and turning that wealth into some more practical things that I could personally use here, especially if there was an SHTF situation. So, it's always, you got to weigh that stuff in your mind. So hopefully that answers your question there. But I can, there's there's a reason all those metals are going up. There's a reason for that, and that's because our currency isn't worth anything anymore. When you look, even in my short lifetime here, I look back 2013, 2014. I was buying a Silver Eagles. I bought a few Silver Eagles in that time frame there. I was paying like $20 a piece for them. And now I don't even know if they are big. I've heard that you can't even really get any right now because that's how high the demand is. So, if anybody knows what a Silver Eagle is going for right now, let me know in the chat, because I'm sure it's, pushing 70, $80 at least. Because, when you trade in junk silver, and that's another thing. There used to be 5 different places around here where you could buy and sell silver. So, whatever, I bought 5 Silver Eagles. And whatever, 3 years went by, the price went up a little, but I need something else. So I'm going to go sell off 5 of my Silver Eagles and get something for them. There used to be 5 different places around here where I can do that. Now there's one. Those places have dried up. So that's another thing to keep in mind. If you have precious metals, right now, and then there might be a time when this changes, but right now, if you want to go cash those in and use that cash to go buy something else, you have to have that other third party person there to cash them in, because you can't go into a Walmart with a bunch of silver half dollars and expect they're just going to give you face value for them, because that's the way the computers and stuff work. But that is something that you need to keep in mind if you want to cash that in. And like I said, those places have dried up. Them small coin shops and them places, they were older people that run them, and they're just not around anymore. I'm sure in a larger city you would be able to do that, but don't sell silver yet. It's going to go much higher. That wouldn't surprise me either. Henry Morgan, thank you very much. Silver Eagles are going for 120. So yeah, that shows you how much of a profit, if you bought a bunch of Silver Eagles in 2013, 2014 for $22 a piece, that's a heck of a increase. 118 plus on Silver Eagles. MR, on your video updating, how do you use your buddy heaters? You showed some parts what to have. Pilot light. Do I need to know what it is so I can order a couple for backstock? There is an igniter pilot light assembly. It comes in an assembly. It's a little L-shaped piece where it has the igniter on there, and it has the pilot assembly, and it has the thermocouple. And usually it's thermocouple is what goes out on them, and that's what keeps your pilot light lit. And it's all one piece. You can't just replace everything. And the last time I checked, they were between like 26 to $30 a piece. So they're not cheap. They are kind of an expensive side for a spare part, because a lot of times, like if you wait until the spring, you can get a buddy heater for maybe 60 or between 60 and $70 when the big box stores are clearancing them out. So that is the part. And I think that, in my own personal opinion, that's the part that if you're going to have a spare part for a buddy heater, that's the spare part that you have. And then sometimes just an igniter will go out. And if that igniter goes out, you can still light that buddy heater with just one of the long igniters, one of the long matches, like electronic matches. You can still light them without the igniter. In fact, I've got one heater here now that we've been using that the igniter doesn't work, and it's not really worth it to me for $30 to go buy a new part for just the igniter when I can buy a click match for like $4 or something. Oh, hopefully that answers your question there, Coney. Uh, follow-up question on my predictions for what's coming in the U.S. More civil unrest. More civil unrest, more militarization of law enforcement. I think you're going to see a real separation coming up here. Yeah, there already is a separation, but I've said this in other videos. I think you're going to see a distinct separation between federal law enforcement and local law enforcement. And I've said this in other videos before, and I've gotten this directly from local law enforcement that I know. Federal law enforcement is on a completely different level than your local county sheriffs, city police, whatever. There's been times when there's been things taking place around here, and the one example that I used is there was a guy around here who had a ham license, and he was putting out a bunch of BS on marine radio. Well, everything on marine radio around here, because we're on the Great Lakes, the Coast Guard records all that stuff. And he got into a fair amount of trouble over the stuff that he said on there. They can triangulate radio transmissions. And if you're a ham, you're calling out your call sign all the time anyway. They have all that information, and they actually staked this guy's place out, his house out. And there were different people that called the local police department, said, hey, there's these weird cars that are parked where they should be parked. That was federal law enforcement staking out this guy's place, and they didn't call up and say to the local sheriff or whatever, hey, we're going to be staking out so and so's place. They didn't tell local law enforcement what's going on. So sometimes they give them a courtesy call, sometimes they don't. Sometimes that goes out the window. And so there is already a separation between your county sheriff that lives 2 miles over from you, or your city police deputy that lives down the street from you, from these federal agencies. It's a complete day and night difference. And I think you're going to see more of a separation of that. I think you're going to see more militarization of the federal law enforcement, and I can almost 100% guarantee you're going to see those ranks in federal law enforcement swell. And in areas like Minneapolis, where all this is going on, I'll guarantee you every day there's more and more federal law enforcement coming into that area, because that's what they do. That's where the problem area is. They're going to flood as many people in there as they possibly can. So if you're in an area where there is stuff like this going on right now, expect more of the same, and expect a lot more of the same. And I guess that's how I look at it. Hopefully that answers your question there. I mean, that's basically how I look at it. How long before we have hyperinflation? I think we already got hyperinflation. I don't even have a grocery cart. I don't even have a grocery cart. I can still see the bottom through my grocery cart, and it's already $100 that I got in there. it's already here. At least that's kind of how I'm looking at it. I mean, look at what Henry Morgan just said here in the chat, $120 for a Silver Eagle that I could buy, what, 12 years ago for 20 or $22. So how many, 100 times fold is that over? I doubling in price is one thing, but that's 4 or 5 times over what you were paying 10, 12 years ago for the same thing. So I'd have to say that hyperinflation is here. I got a great deal this week on boneless, skinless chicken thighs. I bought 10-pound bags for 19.90, $1.99 a pound. That's double what I was paying for them in 2023. I used to get boneless, skinless thighs and boneless, skinless chicken breast in large bags for 99 cents a pound. And I would buy them this time of year and I would can all that stuff. So that's double. It's already double. The price is already doubled. And they do a lot of the retailers and stuff. And I know this because I'm in the retail industry. They won't take those large increases in price. They won't take those large increases in price all at once. They're not going to take something that's $20 and the next day it's $40. They're going to do $3 now. It's going to go 6 weeks, maybe 10 weeks, and then it'll go another couple of dollars. And then it'll go another month, maybe 2 months. Then there might be a holiday in there, so it'll kick it out another week. They'll put on another $2.50. And next thing you know, it's been 5 months and the price is doubled. And that's exactly how they do it. It's just slow, a little bit at a time. And that's how they do it. So they don't have everybody with the torches and the pitchforks because the prices are going up. But there's stuff just where I work now, and I've only been there, a little less than 2 years. There is stuff there that has doubled in price. And that's just what the market is on stuff right now. Bought most of my silver for 20. Yeah, that's good. Hell, I remember, when I first started working, I should have bought some gold coins. I'd really be sitting pretty now if I'd have done that. Let's see here. Hey, Tactical Muffin Top, how you doing? When a loaf of bread is 100,000, it's hyperinflation. I think it's hyperinflation where the bread. There's a bakery in Saginaw, Michigan called Napoleon Bakery. And Napoleon is homemade bread. They ship it out to different places, pretty much every day. Great homemade bread. If you want homemade bread for a recipe or whatever, you want the best grilled ham and cheese you ever had in your life, you want to buy a loaf of Napoleon bread. That used to be 99 cents. Now it's $3, $3.50, depending where you got it. That's what, 200-300% increase. I don't know what the actual textbook definition of hyperinflation is, but to me, that's sort of hyperinflation, because that's not going to go back down to 99 cents. None of the prices that we have seen go up, none of that is going back down. None of it. When a price goes up, it stays up. They might raise it up and then whatever. If you have a $40 item, they raise it up to $69, whatever. They might take $2 off on it then afterward, but they still, raise the price a large percentage. That's just kind of how that all goes. MP 1965. I listened, but no push to talk. Glad I caught the live. Oh, glad to have you here. Private contractor for federal law enforcement. That's going to be the problem. And I think it's probably already heading that way. Very much so. Oh, let's see what we got here. Everybody's. Be interested to hear my thoughts on kill switches for newer cars. It's probably coming. I want to say that they had something several years back where they could shoot out the front of a police car and it had some kind of metal antennas that came up, and when it hit the frame of the car that they were chasing, it would short out the electrical system in the car and would kill the car. So it looked like like a mechanic's cart, what a mechanic lays on when they roll underneath the vehicle. That's what it looked like, and they deployed it from the front of a police car, and then it stuck these antennas up, and them antennas put some kind of EMP short out in the vehicle and killed it. I can see something like that. I can see something like that right around the corner, if not already being deployed in certain areas. But they had over 2,000 in Traverse City protesting against ICE. Yeah, I believe that. And Traverse City has changed a lot in the last few years. Traverse City was always a very wealthy area, but it's changed a lot. The demographics up there are crazy. If I'm predicting a divergence between local and federal law enforcement militarization, how would you handle it if it happened in your area? Well, it's hard to say because it would depend on, exactly what was going on. I know a lot of local law enforcement, and local law enforcement that we have around here, they don't have a problem with private citizens having firearms. They don't, and we have a really good um the citizens around here have a really good exchange between their local law enforcement. I mean, there were different things that have taken place here in our own town where there was disagreements between the local administration and local law enforcement. And local law enforcement asked, "Hey, if you support our side, put a blue um, put a blue light bulb in your front porch light and turn that on if you support our side of the story." You drove through our town, every house had a blue light on it. There, blue light bulbs were sold out in 3 different counties because of that. You couldn't find a blue light bulb to save your life around there because everybody supported the law enforcement and basically not the administration. So I would think if something like that took place, there was some type of separation. I believe that the feds would be on the outs around here. I don't think that they would get the cooperation from the local law enforcement, especially if there was anything against, the rank and file citizens around here. And that's just my opinion and how I interpret how things are in my area. So hopefully that answers your question there. It's hard to predict, to predict things, because there's always angles and there's always different ways to look at things. And I think that if there would be anything, I think the local law enforcement around here would actually stand up for the citizenry to a very large extent. Our little local grocery store just had boneless chicken breasts for $1.49. Yeah, stocked up the freezer. And that's basically what I did with those thighs. That was the cheapest that I seen them. Like those those same thighs at like Walmart were probably at least 79 cents a pound more than what they were where I got them at that small local place. Mr. Bumblehill, I had an old Popular Mechanics magazine. It said in an article that any car built after 1986 can be turned off by a satellite. Well, that could be. That could be. That wouldn't surprise me one bit. 735 Secure, great channel. You have a gift for analyzing the circumstances. Thanks. Hey, no problem. Like I said, I'm nobody. I'm just a common dude that tries to put out helpful videos to help people out. I just happen to be on the prepper side of things. And when I was a kid growing up, I didn't have a lot of mentorship other than my mother and my grandmother, and I am just trying to pass on that stuff for other folks that maybe didn't have, the mentorship that they should have had when they were younger, so they get, pointed in the right direction so they can help themselves. Batman technology, isn't that right, Seabass? I don't know. I don't think I would look good in a bat. I'm too fat. I wouldn't look good in a Batman suit. Yeah, the price of silver is crazy. It is. This even goes higher. I think it was in the late 70s or the early 80s. There was a couple of brothers that were trying to corner the silver market, and that's when silver went sky high too. And I remember the older guys in the coin shops talking about that, and they said there were people that were bringing in literally buckets of silver coins that they had stashed away from, back in the 50s and the 60s when you still had silver coinage out there. People had saved that stuff, and a lot of coins, silver coins, got melted down in that period. And the guys told me they would take those buckets to Chicago to some exchange, and they would cash all of those in. And they said if they would have had enough time to go through all of those and pick out, the rarer mint marks and stuff, he said they probably could have made a lot more money on it. But they had so many people bringing silver in to cash that stuff in. They had they didn't have enough time to go through all that stuff. They were constantly trucking silver down to that exchange so they could, sell it, go back and do the same thing again tomorrow. But they said they were sure that a lot of like really rare mint marks and stuff got basically melted down in that situation. Jane Doe, if the official inflation is 4% and up a year, that's almost free fall. You can check what happened here. We got close once so far. Yeah, and too, those numbers and stuff, they get manipulated very much so. Every new car today is connected to the internet. I got an email. Well, yeah, like the XM radio. That's XM satellite radio. It wouldn't be that hard. That's already your satellite uplink and your XM satellite radio. It wouldn't be that hard to connect that to something else underneath your dashboard. How the hell would the guy that buys the car know? He wouldn't know. Backdoor. Same in Missaugee County, Michigan. The sheriff is the only law enforcement, and they're always helpful. Yeah, and I think a lot of that has to do with local law enforcement goes back and they live in the communities that they serve. So it wouldn't do well for them not, they're part of the community, they serve the community, and they're part of the community. And that's something when you have law enforcement coming in from an outside area, they don't have that same sentiment. I guess that's the easiest way to put it. Rams about to take the lead. Oh, somebody's watching, must be watching football. Oh yeah, Walmart beef. I don't really Walmart beef and pork, as a general rule, we don't get. If we want whole cuts of beef and pork and anything ground, we get that all local. The only thing that I have purchased at Walmart, I have purchased stuff like, different cuts of chicken. That stuff I've gotten, and that's usually has to do with the price, but I'm really selective when I go through that stuff. And that's another thing that I've been noticing now that you mentioned that here just recently. I've been noticing when I have been cooking meat, I have seen so much. Their natural flavorings is basically water because so much water cooks out of that meat. And if you don't believe me, go shoot a deer, cut them deer steaks up and cook them. See how much water comes out of them. Nothing. No water. If you butcher any meat yourself, no water comes out of that meat. They put water in that meat to pump up the weight so they can make a little bit of money. They're getting $15 a pound for a little bit of extra water that's in there. A dangerous freedom. Churn Dash Farm. Bunker Hunt from Texas was the one who made the mess of silver in the silver market. The Hunt brothers. That's exactly what it was. You are 100% correct. Now that you said that, that rings a bell. Now that they said that was the Hunt brothers. Churn Dash. Do you remember when? What year that took place? Was that like in the 70s or the? I want to say it was like in the late 70s, but I don't remember exactly what those guys said. Thanks. Same here with our local police department. I think it's the same everywhere. Yeah, secure. I agree with that. John Poole, our county sheriffs are great. Yeah, I agree. Our county sheriffs, they do, there's not a lot of them that are on duty all the time, but they do a good job. Oh, yeah, it's not just water, salt, water retaining chemicals. Oh, yeah. And I'm sure probably a little radiation too. They irradiates the stuff so it doesn't spoil. I've heard that for a long time already. Candace, my truck is newer, but it does not have Sirius XM. I needed a 8-foot bed and didn't need electronic nonsense. And when I get my next truck, I'm going to seriously look at some type of work truck that doesn't really have a lot of extra stuff on it. I want a decent size engine, and I want a little bit of room to haul stuff. And, I want to have a good transmission in case I tow something. And I want to have enough room inside the vehicle to keep some gear. That's what I want: gear, tools, whatever. And I want gauges that tell me, what my temperature is, what my RPMs are, what my voltage is, what my oil pressure is. That's what I want. I don't want a TV screen that goes across the whole thing. I could care less about that. And I think most people do. They just put that electronic stuff in, so it's planned obsolescence. It goes about so long, and then they'll say, "Oh well," just like an iPhone or whatever. "Oh well, that's too old now. We can't update that no more. So you're going to have to go buy a new $90,000 pickup truck or whatever it is." Uh, Jane Doe 2022 23 is when inflation was 4.1 according to economists. After 4%, it doesn't really matter because it turns into a chain reaction. I That makes sense. I guess I'm not very economically, I didn't have professional economic training because I sucked at math to begin with, but that would make sense. Gallo, in the 70s and 80s, I was an LEO in Key West. When the Cubans came in, we took care of everything, and the feds took all the credit. Why doesn't that surprise me? Papa Frog, J.P. Morgan has their tit in a ringer over selling silver, too much selling of paper. Oh, oversold the paper. Well, that ain't no good. That can't even be legal, can it? Uh, Nobody has good transmissions anymore. Too many plastic parts. I don't know, that work truck that we got at work, that's got an Allison transmission in it, and that seems to be it's it's a joy to tow stuff with that particular vehicle. Even the really long trailers and stuff, when we got pallets of salt and stuff on it, the thing handles great. It's got good pickup, good power, but that's got the 6.6-liter engine and an Allison transmission. So yeah, I probably don't need a truck quite that big, but if one would come along that would be a decent price, I maybe have to jump on something like that. You can't get any work done unless you have an 8-foot bed, and that's true. That's very true. If you want to haul anything or whatever, you're better off with a good sized bed on it. John Poole, I have an AM in my old Chevy, and that's the only thing that doesn't work, giving you problems, huh? Henry Morgan, 92 to 94 Chevy C20 or C30 with 350. Yeah, I remember the old 350. I had a 98 with a 350 in it. That was about the last year they did 350s, and they started doing them 327s, what they call a 5.3 liter now. And they're all right, but they're more for cruising than they are for actually hardcore work. That rumble of that 350 when it started up, nothing was quite like that. And I'm not even really a motorhead guy. I just know what worked for me, and I remember that stuff. It's Captain Jimmy. It's hard to get that in a 1500 modern truck, but the government military contractors, they get special orders. Buying a new used truck from them is probably your best bet. Yeah, hell, I was looking at that, how they're putting like 4 cylinders in half-ton Chevy pickup trucks now. Who in the heck would want a 4-cylinder in a half-ton Chevy pickup truck? Yeah, I wouldn't mind one of them old square. I wouldn't mind one of them old square box Chevys. 100%. Be spooky. Lots of banks are in trouble for overselling silver. Oh, I believe it. Well, banks get away with everything. We were talking about that today, kind of whenever that Jamie Dimon comes on some type of news broadcast or stuff. I just don't like the man. Let's just put it that way. Try to keep it. Try to keep my profanity at a minimum. But yeah, I think everybody really needs to kind of keep an eye on the local social media in their area. keep an eye out for anything that could be potential problems so you can avoid that stuff. And I think it's still best to have a couple months worth of food supplies, medicine, water and stuff at your place, and if you have the ability to generate a little electricity, keep your vehicles topped off and in good working order the best you can. You got a wood stove, make sure you got plenty of firewood and stuff there, because you know what? We haven't had anything cyber take place in a while too. And I've been watching that with all the problems they've been having over there in Iran. That's another thing I've been wondering, when's there going to be another military action taken against Iran? You haven't heard nothing about Taiwan or Ukraine here in a little bit. That's been, waiting for something to pop off in that section too. Everything's pretty much been, civil unrest and domestic stuff here in the United States. And it's not going to get any better. Like I said, I think it would be a heck of a lot worse now if this would be summertime instead of being the cold and the absolute dead of winter. I think that's the only thing that's keeping things from boiling over at this point. Uh, Minnie just got here. I think we got 7 or 8 inches of snow here in west central Ohio. Yeah, that's getting up there. We've had a couple inches here or there, but I think we're well north of where the majority of the storm is at. Mark Hines, I had a 1990 three-quarter ton Dodge square body. So Cummings got $1,300,000 out of it before the parts became unavailable. Wow, that's awesome. Well, like my truck, it's got just 200 and just under 210 on it, and it seems to be going, but it's starting to rust out now. And once that rust starts, they can't really stop. All of the new trucks are rubbish that are being sold, is making the price of an old truck rise. Yeah, pretty much everybody I talk to now says the exact same thing, that the newer trucks, especially the half-ton ones, are basically made to last 100,000 miles, and then they're done. And with the price that they get for them is just crazy. But there's been a couple different contractors and stuff around here that have purchased, like a model year old, but they were still new trucks. They've got pretty decent discounts on them, but all of them have been kind of plain Jane work trucks. That's the kind of thing that when I go to get a new vehicle, that's the kind of thing that I wanna look for. Jane Doe, sometimes you need to choose your allies. The ocean isn't going to save us this time. Well, everything's so interconnected, with the internet and everything else, and nothing's produced domestically anymore. Everything's imported. We ship out our raw materials, and they ship us back cheap consumer goods that end up in the landfill in like 3 years. So yeah, there's so much interconnectivity. People can't really be self-sufficient. A country, I guess, really can't be self-sufficient like it was, pre-World War II. The amount of logistics and the amount of manufacturing power here in the United States during World War II, that was probably the peak of, the American manufacturing. And of course, that's all been sold out by businessmen over the years. They lined their pockets, and national security and the average person are the ones that have suffered. F. Gal, I'm glad you got back to that. We've had at least 2 feet of snow and another 18 inches. We are getting prepared. Yeah, like I said, Mother Nature is always a variable that you got to factor in. The world is getting like the book 1984. Yeah, the ministry of thought and good and bad behavior. Yeah, Candace, a lot of our medications aren't made here. That's another thing I just do not understand. Why would you want the health of your citizenry dependent on foreigners? That doesn't make any sense either. But what's somebody made money on it. Jane Doe, I highly recommend a children's book called How the Pencil is Made. The point is, takes half of the world to make just one simple pencil. Isn't that the truth? Ugh. 1984 was written about the Soviet Union. I guess I never, everybody throws out 1984. I remember, like flipping through the pages of it. I don't really remember reading it though in the past, but I guess that's good information to know. Oh yeah, people reacting to this last storm here down south, just the folks that we know down south have said the exact same thing that, like our friends there in East Tennessee, they said that they went uptown for just couple simple things at the grocery store, and more or less everything was stripped right down to the bare shelves. Yeah, at least the ticks won't be bad. Yeah, we got to hold on to what little good things there we can get. Hey MR, just saw your clip on Grandpa's potato soup that I need to make. Yeah, that was my wife's dad. He made that. He's the one that taught us how to make that. And I noticed people from that era that were born like in the 1940s, they can take canned stuff and they can make some actually really tasty stuff out of that canned stuff, because back then everything was canned. You didn't have all the fresh produce and fruit and all that other stuff that we have now, because the modern logistics. Back then, you ate fresh stuff when it was in season, and the rest of the year you ate canned stuff. And even refrigerated stuff and frozen stuff, that was after World War II. Prior to that, you had either fresh, it was in season, you got it out of your garden, you bought it fresh, you got it from the local orchard, whatever, or the local farmer. And then after that, it was canned and preserved. That's what you had to work with. So they had some really good ways that they could take that canned food, and they could doctor that up so it actually tasted really, really good. Hey, Patriot Preacher, how you doing tonight? 21 inches of snow. Oh, that's quite a bit. I can't. We've had some storms around here, but we haven't had 20 inches of snow in one storm in quite some time, even around here. Oh yeah, moving medication production along with food production outside the country is criminal. Yeah, criminal on one end and highly unethical on the low end. Oh yeah, Scott, it's like the ruling class and the technocrats want things to fail. Yeah, because there's probably money to be made in it. When everything fails, the price of everything will go down. They can buy up more of it and keep it in their portfolio. Mm. Hey, Mary Gallagher, how you doing? 735 secure. Sorry to ask tough questions, but like I said, I think you have a gift. Want to hear your thought on how to prevent the potential upcoming serious unrest. I'm not sure there's anything that we can do to prevent it. I really don't. I think that the genie is out of the bottle, so to speak, to a certain extent. And unfortunately, without some type of really change in people's hearts, which I don't think is going to happen, or some type of really severe crackdown, which is going to turn everything into like very much an authoritarian state. I don't see where things are going to calm down. I really don't. I hope and pray that things will calm down. But right now, the way I see it, we're in a time now when AI and social media has gotten to a point. First of all, you don't really know what's true and what isn't true, because things can be manipulated, pictures and videos can be changed, AI can, create different things, and people will put a spin on stuff, and it's even beyond that. They will flat out lie to get people riled up and against each other. Then you have foreign actors that can come in, and because you don't really know on the internet, you don't really know people where they're coming from. So you have people that will stir the pot just to cause unrest in one particular area because they want that destabilization. Like I said, I don't think that the genie can be put back in the bottle anymore. Not on that, not without some really severe things happening. But like I said, I don't know if that answers your question or not, but that's kind of how I look at it. Just to say, I have tried lots of your meal deals. Great idea after you get food. Yeah, food fatigue in the winter. Jane Doe, potatoes, carrots, onions, garlic, beets, pumpkins, apples are long term food, very much so. Properly stored and you use some of the old techniques, you can store most of that stuff without really a lot, especially like the apples and stuff being wrapped in newspaper. You know, drying potatoes off good, braiding onions and garlic and hanging them up so get air circulation. There's a lot you can do with very little to make some of that stuff last. Berries, tomatoes, cucumbers, and fruits exist as preserves. Yeah, preserves and pickles. Mm. Oh, don't forget to hit the thumbs up, eh? Monkey Food Garden, I appreciate what you always do for me. Another thing I wanted to mention here, I can always tell when the weather is really cold and really bad because I have a video. It's probably one of my largest videos. It's a video on a quick fix for a buddy heater, cleaning out the little pilot orifice there with a Q-tip is basically what the video is. And when that video gets a ton of views, I know that it's cold and there's terrible weather in other parts of the country. And that video in the last 28 days has got something like 20,000 views. And I think that's the most views I have ever had in that short a period of time on that particular video. So whenever I see the views on that video going up through the roof, I know that the weather is bad around because everybody's trying to get their buddy heaters up and running. Jane Doe bought my potatoes last November, last until about April. Farm grown potatoes. Oh yeah, store bought potatoes, they wash them and then that ruins them. That takes away their, the natural protection, so to speak. New listen for a couple of weeks, Anthony. New listen for a couple of weeks. Good group with the US like it is today. Went back to a real pick me up on Tube John Wayne video saying God bless America. Try it later, a group of real Americans. At the end of the Roman Empire, senators did nothing but take all they could from the government for themselves. Sound familiar? Yeah, they don't represent the people, they represent their bank accounts. I think that pretty much everybody would agree with that. It's the same with eggs. Drop Home said, yeah, it is. Unwashed eggs will properly preserved will last much longer than the washed stuff you get from the store. Well, guys, I've been on here an hour. I am going to call it a night here. I appreciate all you guys stopping in and chatting and having a conversation with us here. Some new folks in the chat tonight. Hopefully, I answered everybody's question, kind of from my point of view. Like I said, I'm a nobody. I'm just throwing the videos out there to try to get like-minded people together and share all our different experiences to help people get through tough times, which I think we can all agree we are in tough times now. But anyway, I appreciate each and every one of you guys out there. You guys stay safe, take care, and really watch your six in the coming days and weeks. Appreciate each and every one of you guys, and God bless. Take care.